Welcome to the NT podcast, Science and Theology podcast. Today we are diving into a fascinating and often controversial question. Are camels in the Old Testament an anachronism, or do they actually reflect a historical reality? To help us answer this question, we are joined by one of the world's leading experts on camel domestication and genetics, Dr. Pamela Burger. So, Pamela, welcome. How are you?
Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm very happy that I can contribute to sharing a little bit of the actual knowledge about camels to you and your community. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you also, because we had also your colleague, Dr. Bernard Fay. So he answered many questions, but we want to hear your voice also. So just for those who don't know, Dr. Pamela is a veterinarian and geneticist based at the Research Institute at Wildlife Ecology at the University of Veterinary Medicine in Vienna. With a specialization in animal genetics and conservation, she had led groundbreaking research on the origins and domestication of old world camels. She also co-founded the International Camel Consortium and has published major studies on camel genomes, immune responses, and migration patterns. So, Dr. Pamela, do you want anything to add about your biography and projects and other things?
Thank you very much for this very nice introduction. So also one of my tasks or one of my my goals is also to contribute to the conservation of the camels, also conservation of the wild camels in Mongolia and China, which are a separate species and have never been domesticated, and also to conserve the genetic diversity within the dromedary populations worldwide.
Amazing. Thank you so much. So let's begin with some questions that I prepared for you. My first one is, what are the main archaeological and genetic markers that scholars use to determine when and where camels were first domesticated?
So that's a very interesting question. And for the archaeological markers, we do have usually bones which are excavated in different layers. And even based on these layers and what is found in these layers, in addition to the bones, archaeologists can already give some information about the time of domestication, or the time of the finding, about the context. And then there is also the possibility to do carbon dating, radiocarbon dating, and this is then giving you the age of the bones. So it's not only the bones themselves, but it's also the way how the bones are found. Like if they say it can be hunted species, or they have been domesticated, like butchered, or they have been used in a specific way, like for riding, for pulling the plow. So all of this information can be deducted from the bones in archaeology. Then for the genetics, we have several genetic markers available. One of the most one of the most reliable ones is the mitochondrial DNA. And this mitochondrial DNA is always transmitted from the mother to the offspring. And here we have mitochondrial DNA in the cell in high abundance, because the mitochondria are the power plant of the cell. They produce the energy in the cell, and each of these mitochondrium, they are in 10,000 to 10,000 mitochondria in the cell, and each of them has their own mitochondrial DNA copy inside. So we have only one nuclear DNA in the cell, but we have up to 10,000 of mitochondrial DNA copies in the cell. So this makes them a reliable marker, but it only gives us the information from the mother. So we also use nuclear markers, which are more difficult to retrieve from the ancient material, because there's also always a lot of contamination. So you can imagine, if you have, if you generate a genomic data, then you can expect that 99% of what you generate is actually environmental contamination. Only 1% what you actually retrieve is from the species which you are interested in. So this makes it very difficult to analyze this data, and also very cost intensive, of course.
Can you explain the difference between the domestication of dromedaries, one-humped camels, and Bactrian camels, and how their domestication path differed geographically and chronologically?
Mm-hmm. So first of all, it's really great that you know that you ask this question in this way, because many people think that there has been only one domestication for the two species, and actually that the dromedary might originate from the Bactrian camel, but this is not the case. There are really two different species which have been separated from a common ancestor around 4 to 5 million years ago, so a very long time, and the domestication has indeed happened separately for the two, while the Bactrian camel was the first species to have been domesticated around 5,000 to 6,000 years ago. And we do not know the region exactly, because we have not had ancient material for genetic analysis, so that we could compare the modern gene pool to the historic or to the ancient gene pool. However, there are two hypotheses that the Bactrian camels might have been domesticated in the ancient kingdom of Bactrian kingdom, and this was today's Afghanistan and Iran. And then the second hypothesis is that they have been domesticated further to the east in the Great Plains of Kazakhstan and Mongolia. As I said, for the moment, these both hypotheses exist, and we still need to get more information and more material from like historic ancient camel bones to really answer these questions. And for the dromedary, we know a little bit more, because there we had the chance to investigate also the ancient DNA from dromedaries on the southeast coast of the Arabian Peninsula. And this was the region of today's United Arab Emirates. And dromedaries, based on archaeological dating, they have been domesticated around 3,000 to 4,000 years ago. And to the best of our knowledge, today they have been domesticated on the Arabian Peninsula on the east coast, because here we found material from ancient dromedaries which were wild, like 7,000 years old bone material, and we found the same mitochondrial DNA as we have today in the modern dromedaries from this region, but also distributed over the distribution range of today's dromedaries. So here we can say that there have been a minimum of 6 maternal lineages, so 6 Eves to call, from the dromedaries, which have been contributed from the ancient side, from the wild, into the domestic gene pool today. So we assume that there have been only a few wild dromedaries left, and they have been really used for the domestication and to restock also early domesticated populations.
Great, thank you so much. And now, could you walk us through some of the most important findings in camel genome research, and what they tell us about the relationship between humans and camels over time?
Yes, so the first whole genome sequence from a camel genome was established in 2012 by a Chinese group, and our group followed after with the first dromedary genome, which then was also assembled on a chromosome level in 2021, and the Bactrian camel, the real chromosome assembled Bactrian camel genome, was in 2020, also from a Chinese group. So we were focusing more on the dromedary, and you must imagine how this is done. You have the DNA on 72 chromosomes distributed, and when you sequence this genome, you have tiny fragments of these genomes, which are only 200 base pairs long, and the whole genome is more than 3 GB in size. So it is a lot of algorithms behind to use to map these tiny reads against or to assemble these tiny reads into a reference genome. So it is also important then that you know afterwards which of the sequences are placed on which chromosome. So this is an extra step, and this took a while until also the technology was developed so that we could finally create this reference genome where we really know now which region is also on which chromosome. So why is it important that we know this, and what is important for humans? So these genomic regions, they provide also information about the morphology of the camel, about specific features of the camels, which might also be beneficial for the humans, and also what happened during the domestication, and also what is happening now under anthropogenic selection. So which traits are selected by the human for their benefits. And this is mainly the milk and the meat and the wool. And for these regions, we can now investigate the genome, which regions are associated with a good quality milk production, with high quality meat, but also we can understand which genomic regions are responsible for reproduction, and also we can include health of the animals and also the welfare of the animals, so that we can take this into consideration for designing also breeding programs for the species. So there the genomes are very important and informative.
Yes, very interesting. So, what are the most common misconceptions in the popular or academic discourse about camel domestication that you think needs to be corrected?
Yeah, so obviously we don't know so much yet about domestication in the camels, so there's still a lot of needs to get more information. So there is not so much misconceptions yet. The first one, which I told you already, was that there was the assumption that the dromedaries actually they originate from the two-humped, so the one-humped originates from the two-humped, which was corrected already in the past. And apart from that, there are not so many misconceptions. And I think the reason for that is that we still do not know enough about the domestication.
Oh, that's great, because in other fields there is so much misconceptions, but yeah, it's good to hear that. So some argued that camels were not domesticated in the time of the patriarchs, making their appearance in the Abraham narratives anachronistic. So, however, you pointed out that domestication began 3 or 4,000 years ago. So could you clarify what are the current evidence that tells us about the timing and nature of camel domestication on that time, in the time of Abraham? Yeah.
Yeah, so as I said, the carbon dating gave this information about the camel bones, and then it is the way how the bones are found, in which context they are found. Are they close to settlements, or are they found in a forestry area where they might have been hunted? And also it is important to note if there might have been, like in the findings, for example, we found the camel skeletons they found in Austria. There also were coins included, Turkish coins. So then the archaeologists could tell that these camels skeleton originated from the Turkish wars. So all this information is put together to give actually a real date on that. And furthermore, there are also petroglyphs, which are found in the different deserts, in the Jordan desert, from the Nabatean culture, in the deserts of Saudi Arabia. There are also petroglyphs, which also show pictorial evidence of domesticated camels, dromedaries. So this all together gives us the timing of the domestication.
Amazing. So let's open Hebrew Bible and see where it is first mentioned. We have Genesis 12:16 that states that Abraham received camels from Pharaoh among other gifts. So historically speaking, would it have been possible for Pharaoh in Egypt during the period, let's say 2,000 years ago, or 1750 BCE, depending how scholars date Abraham, to give him camels?
Yeah, definitely. After the domestication, the camels were spread very widely over all the whole Arabian Peninsula, and also then in the north of Africa, so around the Mediterranean coast, in the countries of Egypt, also Algeria, Morocco. So the camels, they reach there quite fast after domestication. So it would be plausible that camels have been known at this and were used also for pack animals and also for milking during this time.
Right. And what about Genesis 24:10? We see Abraham's servant. So it's a little later after Abraham. He goes to Mesopotamia, travels to the city of Nahor to find a wife for Isaac. So in that entire account, it is mentioned that he took with him 10 camels belonging to his master Abraham, who was near the end of his life. So do you think it is historically plausible that Abraham's servant could have 10 camels at this time?
So camels were also often used as a gift, also sometimes also till today or until recently today, not maybe today, but until recent times, they were used also in dowries to give. So I think in this context, it is possible that a small group of camels was given in exchange as a payment in exchange for wives or goods, whatever. So camels were always a very valuable gift.
Great. Let's continue with other examples. We have Genesis 32:15. Jacob. Scholars would date Joseph in the time of Hyksos, 1666 to 1550 BCE. So a little earlier, let's say 17th or 18th century BCE. It says that he had 30 milking camels with their young. So what do you think? Is that good for the region Padan Aram or area of Haran in Upper Mesopotamia?
So I would say definitely this is plausible because also there have been petroglyphs found with camels, with the calves which are drinking. So this milking of the dromedaries and using the milk not only, of course, for the calves, but also for human consumption. I think it must have started very early because this might also have been one of the reasons why the dromedaries were domesticated in some regions for the milk production.
All right. Next, Genesis 37:25 describes that Joseph's brothers saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead with their camels loaded with spices, balm, and myrrh on their way to take them down to Egypt. So, how do we interpret this?
So the Arabian Peninsula was famous also for their inland roads. So these are caravan roads with caravans or routes with caravans, which were transporting not inland incense, of course, but other goods, spices. So they are established caravan routes from the Arabian Peninsula to Egypt. It's similar to the Silk Road, where the Bactrian camels brought the valuable goods from China and from the east to the west. So there was also inland routes from the south to the north. And so this is very plausible that this has been also described there.
Thank you so much. We have only two questions to go. So we have an interesting law in Deuteronomy 14:7, also in Leviticus 11:4, that prohibits the consumption of camels. So does it really make sense that Moses in the 13th century BC, as scholars would date him, that he would command the Israelites who were on their way to the promised land, namely Canaan, to avoid eating camels? Or could this be a retrojection by later authors of the book of Deuteronomy? What do you think?
So usually this type of prohibits, they have a hygienic background. So meat which would deteriorate faster or would decay faster in hot climate. So as it is for the dromedary, I think the shelf life or the production and the keeping of the camel meat has also long tradition in Arabian countries. So I would not know now for a biological or hygienic reason why this meat would have been prohibited. Yeah, so I don't know. Yeah.
Yes, some say that camels were for traveling, so don't eat them because they are useful for many things. So maybe that's a reason, but I don't know.
So we know that different cultures and different countries, they had used different usage for the camels. For example, in the Horn of Africa, there was a focus on milk production, but in other regions, the milk was never used. So there it was mainly used for transport. So that might have been a reason that they said this animal is for transport and then you should not eat it. Yeah. But usually it's a multi-purpose animal, and people also domesticated and started using it for this multi-purpose, like transport, milk, meat, and the wool or the skin. And the dung, everything was used from the camel usually.
Yes, amazing, very interesting. So, my last question about those verses, First Samuel 30, 17 to 18, mentions that during the time of David, 400 Amalekites mounted uh, camels and fled. So, how realistic is that number that 400 men could ride camels in the 10th century BC? Would 400 camels have been needed, or could fewer camels have been used if more than one person could ride a single camel? What do you think?
So we know also that numbers in biblical context, they are often symbolic. They often have symbolic value. So like 12, the 12 tribes, 7 is a holy number. So the question is if this 400 was just a symbolic number or it was a real number. So this is the first which we would need to answer this question. But then 400 camels might even have been possible because there was also the use of the camel in war, in the warfare, as a riding camel, as in the types like a cavalry, when the riders were on the horses, they also had cameleries. And the advantage of these camels were that the person with shooting the bow was on a very higher point, so they could have a different angle and also shoot farther than from the horse. So camels have been used for riding and also for military purposes, also for a very long time. We do not really know when this has started, but it is possible that they have been had a herd for military purposes there. Even until today, camels are used for military purposes in Sudan, where they also control the borders on camel. Usually there's one person racing on a camel or sitting on a camel. But of course, it's also possible that by chance you have two persons on one camel, but usually there was single riders on the camel. Yeah.
Yes, I think I saw police on camels in some countries, so it's really interesting.
Yes, so they're
Yeah.
still used for that purpose. Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much. So, would you agree with Professor Alan Millard? He would say that we should use Old Testament as a source to find out more information about camels rather than to read it like is there anachronisms and other things? Because we have no mention of horses in the time of Abraham, but we have camels. So, do you agree with him or?
So I think it's always good to use for historic questions different sources, and also the Old Testament could be one of the sources. But again, I think especially the numbers and figures must be treated with great caution because they often have this symbolic value, and also the dating of specific historic figures in the Bible is also, I know, under discussion. So we have maybe can use it as an additional information, but just to base it on the Old Testament, it might be a little bit too much. Okay.
Okay, so that's thank you so much, Professor Pamela. And do you have any conclusion for the end for people who are interested in those topics that we covered? So, what would you say to the audience?
I would say camels are really amazing amazing animals. They have very good. They are not from the past. They have a very large potential for the future. And if you have time to get more acquainted with camels, just take this time and use it and get to know camels.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed. So, Dr. Pamela Burger, thank you for joining us today and shedding light on this fascinating subject. So, your research help us bridge the gap between ancient texts and modern science and give us a deeper understanding of how camels fit into both history and the biblical narrative. So, to all our listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe to NT Podcast, like this video and comment below. You can also support us by donations. You can find it in description of this video. So until next time, goodbye.